All right. So good morning from the place I am at, and whatever time is yours, so good afternoon also, and welcome to the session, everyone. Our track for today is Process Excellence, and the title of the presentation is The Cost of Quality by Denis Devos. To introduce Denis, he's a fellow of the ASQ and an immediate past chair of the Quality Management Division. Denis is recognized expert within Canada and US in auditing and quality management. Denis was the recipient of the ASQ Audit Division's Paul Gauthier Award, the division highest honor. He also has a master's in engineering and he's a member of the Association of Professional Engineers of Ontario, Canada. Now I'll just review the housekeeping rules very quickly. This session is for 45 minutes from start to finish. We do expect you to put your questions in the chat window. I'll be collecting those. And we will try to cover as many questions as possible after Denis is done presenting his webinar. And then from there, if those questions that could not be answered will be forwarded to Denis, and he will be able to answer to you directly. Denis, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Shobha. We appreciate that introduction and welcome everybody. My name is Denis Devos. It's a great pleasure to be here with you at our Synergies for Success conference, the conference that brings you both synergy and success. As Shobha mentioned, I am the immediate past chair of QMD, and in that capacity, I welcome all of you too. Ellen Quinn, the current chair, and all of the other chairs of the divisions have done just an amazing amount of work to bring you this outstanding conference, and we want to thank them too for everything that they've done to bring this to you. I don't know why you're here, either with me or in this conference, but I want to implore you to make sure that whatever brings you here, all of a demand from all of us that we deliver that. Okay, whatever brings you here, demand from all of us that you get that. All of the speakers, presenters will have contact information in their presentations or available to you. Reach out. That's why we're here. We don't have a lot of friends. We want to make new friends. We want all of you contacting us to continue the discussion. So please do that. As Shobha said, I've been involved in quality auditing, lean methods, consulting for about 25 years. I've contributed to various ASQ handbooks, etc. So let's get started. I'm going to talk very briefly about the traditional cost of quality model, which includes the cost of good quality, if you will, and the cost of poor quality. I'm going to be talking a little bit too about opportunity cost, really as the hidden impact of poor quality on your organization. And not everyone that talks on this topic will talk about opportunity costs, but I find that that's necessary, and I hope you find that that's useful for you. I have some tips and finally some examples for my own practice and my own clients where working on cost of quality reduction can really lead to breakthroughs for the organizations. So there's a definition. Really, it's just what do all the things associated with quality assurance cost us? And you'll see there on the slide, the traditional model has two sides to the ledger. We have a cost of poor quality, right? When things go wrong, things are bad, there's a cost to that. On the other hand, we can think about the costs of good quality, things like appraisal costs, prevention costs, investments that we make in quality of goods and services and customer experience, et cetera. So on the one hand of the ledger, we have investments we make for quality assurance. On the other hand, we have the debit side of the ledger, costs associated with poor quality, screwing things up. So I think a lot of you have seen this before, but a quick recap on the model itself. We can think about these costs of poor quality, non-conformance costs. There can be external failures, right? Failures that occur outside of our organization, usually at a customer, right? The customer rejects our product. We have to then go maybe to their factory, we have to go to their warehouse, we have to sort material because they fear they have, defective product in their warehouses. So there's a can be a huge cost to that. Warranty, things of that nature. So any failures that occur after product is shipped, external to the organization at the customer level, that's an external cost of non-conformance. We can think also of internal failures, costs of non-conformance within our four walls, things like scrap, rework, etc. So those are the costs of poor quality, if you will, that belong on that side of the ledger. The conformance costs, on the other hand, investments we make for quality assurance. That can include the routine inspections and tests that we do on our product. A lot of, just about every product we make, there's some level of inspection in there. Well, that comes at a cost, right? We have the hourly wages of operators and inspectors that perform that work. We have the cost of gauges, test equipment, etc. Auditing, there's a lot of auditing, internal, external auditing cost. We can roll that in as an investment. And then prevention costs, things like training and education, things like process failure modes and effects analysis, PFMEA, things like automation. So on the one hand, we invest in quality. On the other hand, we incur costs associated with poor quality. Many of you have probably seen this before. It's the cost of poor quality iceberg, right? A lot of us are pretty good at capturing the cost of product recall, warranty, returns, rework, rejects, waste, right? Doing things twice. But below the waterline, there are a lot of hidden costs associated with our poor performance. Overtime, I'm going to talk about that. If you're very busy and you have to remake an order, well, you may have to do that on overtime because you're very, very busy. Now you're incurring a time and a half penalty for wages, late paperwork, excess inventory, premium freight, things of that nature. Customer allowances. The customer complains about our product, so maybe we give them a discount. Oh, let me give you some money. Money makes all these things go away. So we have all of these costs of poor quality that kind of hide below the waterline, and we need to be thinking about those too. And when I talk about opportunity cost in a few minutes, that really is another way to think of or capture these hidden costs you see below the waterline. Again, some more examples in a traditional non-conformance cost: warranty, sorting. We have to remake an order that because we screwed it up. That's very bad. Then we remake an order. Okay, there's those costs, but what's the cost of breaking into the schedule to remake an order, right? You're already very busy. Maybe you've got a 6-week backlog. Your irate customer isn't going to wait 6 weeks for you to replace their product. Oh my goodness, we have to break in now into our schedule to remake the order, and then the dominoes will fall. It's a big, big mess. What's the cost of that impact? Not everyone thinks about that. We may have to travel to the customer. We may have to travel to the field. We can accrue those costs, add those into the cost of poor quality. Customer grief, loss of reputation, right? How do you put a price on your brand? How do you put a price on customer loyalty? And all of a sudden, right, your customers maybe start shopping somewhere else. On the other hand, we have internal failure costs, scrap, rework, repair. Again, we're remaking an order, we're breaking into the schedule. That can go on both sides. Even if I haven't shipped the product yet, maybe I have a whole batch of defective product. Uh-oh, I might have to remake it. Again, I'm breaking into the schedule. Huge impact to doing that. We can have downtime. Downtime for quality issues can be included in a cost of poor quality metric. taking a markdown to earn a concession from a customer, expediting raw materials, right? You've used up all your raw materials to make this batch. You've had to scrap. Now, oh my God, I got to bring raw materials from overseas. I'm flying them in. It's a big, big mess. Again, be thinking constantly of all of these hidden costs below the waterline that may not be so obvious to you. In the automotive industry, where I spend most of my time, in our quality management system requirements, we actually are required to track the cost of poor quality as a KPI. And it's just such a good thing to do. I advocate for all organizations to be tracking cost of quality, or at least cost of poor quality, as a KPI. Unfortunately, and this is probably what brings me here today, I work with a lot of organizations who will show me cost of quality data, right? I'm working with clients, or I'm still doing internal audits for clients. So I see a lot of different ways that people track and account for the cost of poor quality. Unfortunately, most organizations aren't doing it right. Either they're leaving out significant costs, or they're just calculating some of the costs wrong. And again, I think that's what brings me here today, and through this morning, I hope that you're going to see a little bit what you include, how you calculate it, et cetera, et cetera. So be on the lookout. Maybe this isn't as easy as everyone thinks. Conformance cost, on the other hand. So these are the investments that we make in quality. Think of it as insurance, right? We're paying some amount of money as insurance against the cost of external failure. So we invest in prevention cost, design choices that we make, right? Design for manufacturability, make it easy to make so you incur less scrap, less rework. FMEA, like I said, I love FMEA. Maybe some of you have heard some of my presentations on FMEA. Literally my favorite four-letter word that starts with F, without a doubt. Error proofing, investments in error proofing, poka-yoke, training at all levels, quality management systems, and all of that overhead that infrastructure brings. We do that to prevent non-conformance. Those are investments. Audits, again, at all levels. Appraisal costs, a little more garden variety, product inspections, product testing, inspections, the investments we make in calibration and in equipment, the cost of the folks and the materials associated with inspection and test. So in the automotive industry, we have a very high cost of non-conformance, and they do that deliberately. If you send one bad part to General Motors, they punish you with crushing sanction. They may require you to do 100% inspection for the defect until the process is back under control. If you can't get your process back under control, that 100% inspection can last forever. And in a mass production environment, that gets very expensive. We have third-party containment, where General Motors or Ford or Toyota, one of my customers, doesn't even trust my ability to inspect parts, never mind make them. We have to bring in and pay for third-party inspectors. And I just threw out a quick number there, $30 an hour, 3 people on 2 shifts over a month. It can add up to $29,000 or more very, very quickly. And sometimes the trigger for third-party containment is one bad part. So you ship a $10 part to General Motors and they don't like it. Well, they don't just throw it in the trash. You don't just give them a $10 bill. No. You end up with this very high punishing cost of non-conformance. And they do that deliberately because they want you to invest whatever it takes to prevent non-conformances from getting to them. You see, if the cost of one bad part is $10, I'm going to eat that all day long, right? Where's my incentive to invest in automation and poka-yoke, et cetera? Well, if one bad part now starts costing me $20, $30, $40, $50,000, I'm going to spend whatever it takes to fix those problems. Some of you have seen the cost of quality curve. That's really what I just described, right? If the cost of non-conformance gets so high, we're compelled to invest in preventive measures and even more appraisal to make sure that the customer is never delivered any bad product. So again, think of it like insurance. We understand the cost of non-conformance. We invest in prevention. We invest in appraisal, et cetera, to ensure that we never are delivering bad products to our customers. Now, again, I do advocate for every one of your organizations to start to track cost of quality, or at least cost of poor quality, as a key performance indicator. When you think about it, the cost of poor quality number, the value that you incur throughout the year, becomes a bag of free money that then is available for you to invest in improvement, right? So if I spend $100,000 a year, it's usually more, on poor quality, that comes right off your bottom line. That's free money, that's profit, right? Can we invest some of that $100,000 that we spend every year on poor quality on investment, like automation, additional inspection and test, et cetera? If you're involved with FMEA, doing FMEA can be a big pain, a big investment of time and resources, but does it cost or does it pay? Right? So when we go back to our cost of poor quality curve, you'll see that the curves cross. And the curves cross at the point where you've optimized the investments you make in good quality against the costs you incur for poor quality, right? So where those lines cross, you want to make sure that you don't underspend or underinvest. At the same time, you want to make sure that you don't overinvest. So you're investing through both doing FMEA and acting on the results of FMEA to decide where to invest prevention controls in preventing non-conforming product from being made, certainly, and also from being shipped out to your customer. I did this presentation at a conference for state highway and transportation officials. And, what is the cost of non-conformance? This road bed, this is just off the internet, but it's an example where in order to meet timing, in order to meet the project milestones, the contractor paved asphalt over a very muddy roadbed. Right, the roadbed was muddy, so they applied the asphalt, and within a few days, it all caved in. The state inspector came, told them to tear it all up, and it was about 3 miles worth of road. What's the cost of that? Right, you make a business decision to pave over the wet mud, maybe because you've got other timing constraints, other program constraints, and then oops, you screw it up. And what's the cost of tearing up 3 miles worth of road and redoing it, right? And I know that you're going to have 100 examples from your own companies. The cost of poor quality is really a capacity killer, right? You're spending time, you're spending your company's resources, machine resources, right? Remaking orders or reworking product. Sometimes if you're not very busy, you don't care if you have to spend a little bit of time reworking a repair or remake because you're not very busy. You have people, you're paying people, you just can remake orders. That really hides the true cost of poor quality. That really hides the impact on your organization. If you're not busy, right, remake an order, you're never late, who cares? If you're full, right now, if you are right at full capacity and you're working maybe 3 shifts a day, 5 days a week, the cost of every part you scrap has to be at the selling price. You can never get that time back again. Think about that. If I make a product that I maybe make for $2, I sell it for 10, and I have to throw it away, the opportunity cost there is really, I've lost $10, not 2. And then if you're full, any rework, any repair, any rerun has to be done on overtime because I can't do it during the week. I'm full. customer orders back up, lead times get longer. So if you're not at full capacity, you can get away with some of these sins. But when you are at full capacity, you're so sensitive. Every little bump in the road is a huge impact on your business. So let's talk for a few minutes about opportunity costs. The dictionary tells us that it's the loss of some potential gain from doing other things, right? So what else could you have been doing while you're doing rework? Could you have been making good product to sell? Yes. The impact of every unit you can't build and sell, the true impact is the selling price to the customer, not what it cost you to make it, right? How much profit could you have earned while you were building products to sell rather than building products you're throwing away into a dumpster? Opportunity cost. That's the true cost of poor quality. These are literally examples that I've heard from clients, right? Scrap isn't a problem. We just melt down the aluminum scrap. We just melt down we regrind the plastic. Our materials is reused. We lose almost nothing. Really? We pay our employees their hourly wage anyway. So if they're there anyway, we're having them sort parts, it actually costs us nothing. And I hope that these examples are as shocking to you as they are to me. And these are things I hear when I'm working with clients and either helping them with their cost to quality model or talking in these terms. They don't get it. Oh my God. We pay people to be here anyway. They might as well do rework. Wow. Never mind that they could be making real parts. Here's a quick example. I play a little game on my phone, a little fun game on my phone. And in this game, I can spend an in-game dollar to earn 3 gems. At some points in the game, I can make a bet. If I bet $1, I can get 3 gems all the time, 100%. But I can spend $1, that same game dollar, to try to get 4 gems, but it's not guaranteed. And I don't know, the game doesn't tell you the level of success. I think it's about 70%. I'm just guessing that. But the idea is, right, I'm going to risk more to get more reward. That kind of makes sense. Why play it safe? For the same dollar, I might get 4 gems or 5 gems. But if you think about it, every time my 4-gem bet fails, I could have had 3 guaranteed. So I lost. The opportunity was 3 guaranteed. I threw away 3 gems to try to get 4. So now I would have to win the 4-gem bet again 3 more times just to break even. And you might have to dwell on that for a few minutes, but that's a fact. It's the same thing with profit in your organizations. This is a real example from my own life. There's a cheap gas station about 20 minutes from my home. And sometimes I can save up to $6 a tank. Well, that's real money now, isn't it? I can save $18 an hour getting cheap gas. Now, if it's a Saturday and I'm not working, it might be worth my time to drive 20 minutes back and forth, spend 40 minutes of my day on a Saturday to save, 18 bucks an hour getting cheap gas. But what if I could be billable? What if it's in the middle of the week? I would never trade away a billable hour of my time for $18, right, worth of cheap gas. Right? I would spend, $50 more on a tank of gas if it's getting me to my client, because what is 1 hour worth of my time worth? On a weekend, if I'm not billable, my time is worth nothing. My father used to tell me, your time is worth nothing until you sell it. So you think about, what could I be doing with that time? Getting cheap gas? or being billable, right? So now if I'm busy, I can sell every hour, maybe even the weekend. I'm at full capacity. There's no way I'm going to gamble away any amount of time chasing cheap gasoline. I don't know if you've ever been exposed to lean accounting. What is the value of a half-built house? Traditional accountants would tell you it has some value because there's sunk cost in it. The truth is, the value of a half-built house is nothing, right? You have all that sunk cost, but the value of a half-built house is zero, right? It's worth nothing until it's fully built and you sell it. I don't know why I put this example in here, but I like this example, right? A half-built house is worth nothing. What else? Here's an approach to reducing your cost of poor quality. So when you are tracking cost of poor quality, though the metric should be pointing you towards identifying opportunities to reduce costs, save more money, right? Use a Pareto principle, quantify the true cost of the problem, prioritize those actions so you get the low-hanging fruit, right? You get the most bang for your buck. After you prioritize all the actions, you create an action plan to improve those processes, evaluate the result. This is just continuous improvement 101, right? Create a plan, execute the plan, evaluate what you did to see if you saved money, to see if your cost of poor quality went down. We hope that it does. And then once you know that you've been successful, right, sustain the gain, update your processes, make permanent changes, sustain the gain, and continuously improve. So again, prioritization, you can use a matrix, you can use a Pareto, things like that. Let me give you a couple of examples just to roll out the remainder of our few minutes here. So these are real examples from my practice. This was a plastic extrusion job shop with many customers. Some were automotive. They did some painting in-house. They had customer rejections and reruns of about 3 or 4 per month. They had molding defects and paint defects of about 2.5%. And this is a true story. I went in and I was talking to the client, and because they had some automotive business, they were on the hook to calculate cost of poor quality. They told me it was $300 a month, $3,600 a year. And of course, the plant was full. So even Denis, who is a very little brain, even I knew, now that can't be right. So I got out my pen and I just started to doodle with them. And just literally sitting with the plant manager or the quality manager, I can't remember. I said, let's run some numbers. All right, it's 720 pieces for a run. The cycle time is 3 parts per minute over 4 hours. There's changeover time. The cost of an hour of machine time in a molding press was $600 an hour. Add an hour for setup. There was a bunch of labor. They had to do it on the weekend. $30 an hour, some additional inspection and packaging. Remember, the parts sell for $2.10. You use the selling price to understand the full impact of poor quality. So, again, just on the back of an envelope, 5 hours at $600 an hour for the press, $3,000, labor and inspection, lost sales, right? Adding it up. And this was just kind of conservative back of the envelope thinking. One run. So they thought their annual cost of poor quality was like $3,600. One run was going to cost them $4,800, not including, weekend supervisory support, blah, 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 all the things. Okay. So if you spend about $4,800 for one rerun, you're doing 4 a month, 48, 50 of these a year, $233,000 a year. Of course, his jaw dropped. And when you start to calculate and understand the true cost of poor quality, that's what's going to happen. You're going to be surprised. Your customers, right? Your company, your leadership will be surprised. But this is all true, right? And if anything, this is probably a conservative number. Another example is rework, right? I do about 5,000 orders per year. I have a 2% rework. That's 100 reworks per year. It doesn't sound like a lot, 2%. But then you start to add up the costs associated with that rework. We inspect and reject the original lot, $30. We prepare a ticket, right? There's somebody in the front office, costs you $45. We're reworking the product. It's 2 people on a weekend because we're busy, right? We're moving material. There's a cost of a forklift driver in the warehouse. We're repackaging the parts. We're re-inspecting the parts. There's an inspector we had to bring in on overtime. $730. But if you're doing 100 a year, $73,000 right off the bottom line, right? You might as well just take that bucket of money and just throw it in the fireplace. You're just burning it. I think this is the last slide, and I look forward to having some questions or discussions here. How bad can it get? You may remember a few years ago the airbag recall. It was like 42 million cars. The company was Takata, a Japanese company, the largest manufacturer of airbags in the world. Their product was in like all the cars. Japanese cars, American cars, European cars. And this recall, again, 40 some odd million cars, fines and payouts, it broke the company, right? This giant automotive supplier, the biggest auto airbag manufacturer in the world, the value of that company went from 400 billion yen to 4 yen. I don't know what that is in dollars. The company was sold off in pieces because of that quality defect when airbags were, hurting people with shrapnel. Union Carbide, this was in the mid 1980s. I don't know, fewer of you will remember this one. Union Carbide had a chemical plant in Bhopal, India, and I think it was a fertilizer plant. And there was an explosion at this factory, and of course, a lot of toxic fumes were vented to the atmosphere from the explosion from the fire. I can't remember how many people died. I want to say it was close to 10,000 people died. A court awarded $470 million in damages. The CEO fled, and I don't know if they ever found him, but he fled and remained a fugitive from justice. And now, if you Google Union Carbide, you're going to find out that company doesn't even exist anymore. So we know how bad this can get. So please pay attention to the cost of poor quality. If you're not compelled to track it because maybe you're not in the automotive industry, do it voluntarily. It's just the right thing to do. It's a great consolidated metric for you to keep your eyes on. I think my friend Doug might actually be on this call. Doug Wood, who many of you have met, wrote this book, and it's a really great book. You should go out and buy it. So in conclusion, right, when you really account for the true cost of poor quality numbers, when you think about rolling in opportunity costs, the true impact of poor quality can really be shocking, right? And the real cost is using your productive assets to make scrap and make things twice. Then think about your loss of reputation at your customer, right? The loss of brand loyalty. I'm all of a sudden remembering Maytag. You may remember years ago, Maytag used to be the best, washer and dryer in the market, and then they had some quality problems. I can't remember exactly what it was, and then Maytag's reputation took a big hit, and I'm not sure if it ever fully recovered. What else? Identify those high cost areas, work on something with a high payoff. And again, a cost of quality or a cost of poor quality at the very least is such an important KPI for all of your organizations. This wouldn't be a complete presentation without some kind of Einstein quote. So thank you very much. I would that concludes my presentation. I would love to hear some questions, take some questions, engage with you. My email address, my phone number are right there on the screen. Reach out. I need more friends, so please do that. Go ahead.
Thank you, Dennis. So I have a question here.
Yeah.
It says, I've seen these ideal total cost of quality curves in the presentations and books. I'd like to know if you witnessed an actual application and determination of these functions slash curves and the determination of the ideal or actual minimum total cost of quality.
Yeah, the answer to that is no. I mean, what you're talking about is the actual equation, the actual function. The cost of quality curves are more just, a construct. I'm sure examples like that exist. You could probably create some type of function and literally mathematically derive where those curves cost, but unfortunately, I don't have an actual example that would answer that would speak to that question. Thank you, though.
Okay, and then there's another comment here, which I think you just addressed, but do you have a favorite book on cost of quality? So you just recommended one from
I
Doug.
do.
Is there any other?
Probably are. Honestly, you would have to Google that. You would have to look at ASQ Quality Press. None but that one come to mind right now. Um,
Okay, and
these
then
are these are these are great questions. You stumped me. So bring some more. Give me something I can answer.
so I don't have more questions, but I have a couple of comments here.
Yes.
So one of the comment was in the UK construction industry, flammable cladding on the Grenfell Towers led to tragic loss of life and a huge costly effort for remediation of buildings in several countries.
I
Anything you have to
remember
add to
that.
that?
I remember that. Yeah, what happened was there was a building in England somewhere, and it had this aluminum or something clad on the outside of it. And then there was a fire. And what happened was the gap between the building and the clad served as some sort of chimney, and it kept bringing oxygen in from the bottom all the way up the tower, and the thing just burnt like much faster than you would have expected. I don't, yeah, that's a cost of quality maybe associated with a design choice, right? I mean, that's a cost of poor design and somewhere that in the design FMEA, right, was never considered. So from a production quality perspective, the building was probably great, the clad was probably great, and everything met the specifications. But from a design perspective, that design choice is what led you to that catastrophe. So yeah, what's the cost of that? And a great example, maybe that belongs on my slide with Union Carbide and Takata. Great example. So thank you, whoever kind of brought that up.
I have another question. What's the typical cost of poor quality percentage you see in manufacturing?
That's a great question. It's at least 1%. It can get to about 1.5%. And if your sales are $10 million, that's start or $100 million will keep it easy. If your sales are $100 million, that's $1.5 million, free money. Now that's maybe the cost of poor quality. Again, most companies don't track the positive side of the ledger. So the 1.5%, 2%, and that's an average. It gets worse. It can be up to 5% or more, but that tends to be the cost of internal and external failure. If you rolled in the conformance cost, the investment, well, that would likely double or more. You want to spend more money on prevention than you do on external failure, or at least sort of a comparable amount. Good, good,
We have so many questions coming in now. So,
great.
um, hold on. How would you suggest capturing the COPQ for labor when you are not in a manager position privy to people's pay?
Well, you must know about what people make. You can use a factor. Is it $20? Is it $25? Is it $30? And then or make it a round number. Maybe it's $50 with the cost of, medical benefits and other things. That's a great one of the things I didn't talk about, but it can be important in a cost of quality model is using factors, right? You use a nominal wage like $50, right? It's an easy number. It doesn't matter if it's 35 or 38 or 40 or 50 or 60. pick a number, be consistent, right? Measurement error can be a huge problem if you keep tweaking the model, right? Your results are going to move. So when you derive a cost of quality model, pick these factors and just stick to it. Another example I use is expedite, right? I have to expedite material to a customer. Well, don't wait for the freight invoices to come in, right? We're engineers, we're not accountants. So if I have to ship a truckload of parts, especially to the West Coast, give it a number. It's $500, it's $1,000, right? Don't worry about getting invoices and reconciling it to the nearest penny. Sometimes we can use factors. So make a reasonable guess, right? The wage factor is going to be $40. Pick a number. It has to be realistic, and get your financial people to kind of agree with it. Yeah, it costs $1,000 to send a truck to the West Coast. Yeah, rolled up, our employees cost about $50 an hour. I hope
Um,
that answers that question.
Yes, and there were two comments actually. One from Doug Wood. He's saying that use the median cost of labor by pay grade. And the
Okay.
other comment was a company finance department usually has a rule of thumb pay rate for COPQ calculations. I'll take one more question that came through. So, what are some ways to track total cost of poor quality for opportunity costs outside of manual tracking in Excel for a service industry?
Yeah, I don't know how big your company is, but very often your financial department already has spreadsheets, or they have MRP or ERP systems and software that kind of calculate a lot of this stuff. For a lot of folks, it's a great question. It's like, where do I even start? If you talk to your financial people, a lot of times those numbers exist, or that data capture is already in place. You can work with them, right? Get that median cost of wages and other things, and engage with them, and they will also reality check your model, right? Sometimes when you calculate these costs, they get very high and people don't believe it. It's like, oh my God, it can't be that much. Well, then go to your controller, right? Go to your financial guys, show them what you did, and have them reality check it. And 9 times out of 10, they're going to say, yeah, you know what? That's about what it is. So software can help if you already have kind of accounting software that captures costs. That I would just start with that. Whatever exists or whatever could exist, just from a basic sort of cost accounting perspective.
So we are at 8:42 and we do have to stop. I'll give you one more question if you can answer that very quickly. What
Or
is the industry best practice you suggest to mitigate cost of poor quality?
Wow. I guess it depends what is driving your cost of poor quality, right? So again, prioritize, use Pareto, figure out what is costing you the most, and then you would attack that first, and you would get at mitigation for those most expensive drivers. Whatever that is, that would be the best practice. That's how you do it.
Well, with that, I think we'd like to wrap it up. So I want to, and I don't have any more questions, so we can safely wrap it up now. So I want to, first of all, thank you, Dennis, for that excellent presentation. And I want to thank every single attendee here to, come and join the session. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone. Enjoy your day.